So, Brett R. Smith, hey, thanks, buddy, for man. It's always good talking to you. And
Yeah, you too.
another fellow Phoenician. One of these times, I'm going to have to come out there and get some Texas over at Buc-ees or something.
Yeah.
Dude, they're building the Buc-ees here in Ohio.
Oh, are they really?
At Huber Heights. Yeah, dude, I'm watching. It's got to be like.
Yeah, man, those brisket sandwiches, they're the real deal, man. I mean, they got so much great stuff in there. You can get homemade fudge in there. They have the brisket. They have their jerky.
They sang to me when I came in the door.
Yeah.
It was
whenever they have like a new round of brisket that they're chopping up, they all sing. So it's one of those things where it's funny. Yeah,
it was like a beef, it was like a beef Disneyland or something.
It kind of is. It's sort of got this sort of amusement park kind of look and feel to it, but like that you go inside and like they're selling barbecues and smokers and like every single type of jerky known to man. But yeah, they have good burritos. That place is awesome, man. I mean, it's awesome. So
the prices were different either. I've been losing weight. I've been trying to watch what I eat. I went to Taco Bell a couple weeks ago. First time I've had a taco in a couple of years. $4.19 for one taco. Dude, you remember the days you could get a box
$5
for $5, man.
$5. You could eat like a king. I mean, yeah, it's they have this 90s menu that's coming back with like a bunch of 90s food.
Triple layered burrito and all that.
I was like, where's the 90s pricing?
Yeah, no kidding.
That's the only thing it's missing, because it's like I used to count change out of my ashtray. I always put change in my ashtray because I didn't smoke, but I'd count change out of my ashtray in the college years.
That was college food. Yeah,
put together about $4 in quarters or whatever, and you could go to Taco Bell and actually, like I said, eat like a king. Go home and eat well and fall asleep. That's no longer the case. But Buc-ee's prices are actually pretty awesome. We went in recently and got a couple brisket sandwiches but we bought some other stuff as well. But if you just want to go in and get a sandwich and like a drink, it's pretty reasonable. So, dude.
When Arch Beaver Applin started his quirky convenience store, he had no idea that his biggest little store would become an icon of everyday life in the Deep South. What's the key to this Texas gas station empire? This is the fascinating story of one of the biggest and most underestimated companies in America. Welcome to Intellectual Digest, your source for all things intelligent, nostalgic, bygone, and fun. A century ago, in Harrisburg, Louisiana, married couple Arch and May Applin decided to open a general store. The Applins sold just about everything in their store, from dry and leather goods to medications, shirts, beef, and hammers and nails. Arch and May's flagship store was a big success, mostly due in part to its strategic location. The small town of Harrisonburg, Louisiana, is situated on the west bank of the Washita River and was a hotspot for weary travelers. For those who were going east to Mississippi or west into the hill country, you had to cross the Washita on the ferry that docked near Main Street in Harrisonburg. Arch and May's store just happened to be on Main Street, and everyone who crossed the river needed to stop at Catahoula Parish's biggest little store. Arch and May took a lot of pride in their store, and they wanted different kinds of customers for Arch Applin's biggest little store in Catahoula Parish, as the sign out front read. Arch and May sold unique products that those travelers couldn't get anywhere else at the time. Arch and May sold turnip greens from their own garden and syrup made from their own sugar cane. Arch even raised cattle and pigs, and so he built a smokehouse on his property to butcher and cure the beef and pork for sale at his store. It didn't take long for the biggest little store to become iconic and necessary in Arch and May's little corner of the South. I'm an unabashed meat lover, and I could go for some Arch and May's beef right about now, or some of that sugarcane syrup on pancakes. How about you? Years later, Arch and May's son, Arch Jr., remembered fondly. It was so good that the salesmen coming from Alexandria, Monroe, and Natchez, Mississippi, they'd put their order in for so many hams and so many pounds of sausage. How sweet is that? May gave birth to Arch Jr. in 1925, and he was basically born and raised in the store. May nursed baby Arch in the back room, while Arch Sr. took care of the customers. Arch Jr. put in a lot of hours at the store as a regular employee. Things were good in the Applin family, even as the Great Depression and World War II approached. During World War II, Arch Jr. left to serve in the Pacific Theater, and when he came home after the war, Arch Jr. went right back to the family business. Arch Sr. and May were doing good business and had become local celebrities. But Arch Jr. wanted something bigger and better than his parents, the store, and Harrisonburg could give him. He went to college and went to work as a teacher and basketball coach. Soon, Arch Jr. and his wife Loretta moved to Lake Jackson, Texas. Arch Sr. and May missed their son, but they kept the family business thriving. Arch Jr. inherited both of his parents' entrepreneurial talents, and he parlayed these skills into a successful construction business. Arch Jr. left his teaching and coaching jobs and worked full-time in construction, building churches, post offices, apartment buildings, and the new subdivisions that were built for soldiers returning home from World War II and their growing families. The 50s were an exciting time for the Applin family. The biggest little store continued to be popular and useful. In 1958, Loretta gave birth to Arch Applin III, who, just like his father, was raised in the family retail business. When he visited Arch Sr. in May, little Arch III would do anything to help out, from pumping gas to stocking shelves. Arch III was always pestering his grandparents to let him run the cash register, but they said he was too young. As he got older, instead of going to work for his grandparents at the biggest little store, Arch III graduated from Texas A&M with a construction sciences degree. Would the biggest little store be able to grow without an heir once Arch Sr. and May retired? Would Arch Jr. ever be able to leave his construction business behind? The 60s and 70s went by in a flash for the biggest little store and the Applin family. The people of Harrisonburg and the surrounding area still loved their biggest little store, but everyone knew that soon Arch Sr. and May would either have to expand their empire or retire and move on. No one thought that Arch Jr., Loretta, and Arch III would come back to Louisiana, as they were established and happy in Lake Jackson, Texas. Arch III was determined to follow his father into the construction business, stating somewhat optimistically, "I thought I would build skyscrapers." If only he knew. The early 80s were a difficult time for many working people, particularly smaller, family-owned businesses. President Ronald Reagan implemented some questionable economic initiatives, which were meant to level the playing field when it came to decreasing inflation and increasing employment. These initiatives were referred to as Reaganomics, and the objectives of Reagan's plan were to reduce government spending, reduce federal income and capital gains tax, reduce government regulation, and tighten America's money reserves to help reduce inflation. Yeah, right. This plan failed miserably, and only served to make America's situation worse by widening the income gap, reducing economic mobility, and causing the national debt to triple. Yikes! You would think that a little regional family business like the biggest little store would flounder, because so many of these small businesses did go under in the 80s. But the exciting saga of the Applin family was just getting started. The 3 generations of the Applin family somehow managed to utilize Reaganomics and the resulting economic recession to their advantage. The biggest little store was about to get bigger, and get a new name to boot. I would love to hear biggest little store and Applin family stories. If any of you watching and listening are from Harrisburg, Louisiana, and you or someone you know are old enough to remember the early days of the Applins and the biggest little store, I would love to hear your stories in the comments section. In 1982, 2 years after he graduated from college, 23-year-old Arch III, to whom we will now refer as Arch, was struck with an idea. Arch had his eye on an unused, available property near a busy 4-way stop sign on the county line between Lake Jackson and Clute, Texas. Arch spoke to the owner of the property, who just happened to be A.G. McNeese Jr., a wealthy banker from Houston. McNeese sold the property to Arch, whose plans for the business were simple: to follow his parents and grandparents into the convenience store business and to provide folks with cheap ice cream and clean bathrooms. Arch, along with his business partner Don Wasick, opened their first convenience store and gas station at 899 Oyster Creek Drive in Lake Jackson on July 28, 1982. The name of that store was Buc-ees, which came from a most interesting source. Arch got the name Buc-ees from his childhood nickname Beaver, which is a reference to Bucky Beaver, the animated mascot for the popular 1950s product Ipana toothpaste. Arch loved the commercial for Ipana, where Bucky Beaver's slogan was, "Brusha, brusha, brusha, get the new Ipana, it's dandy for your teeth." To make the story even better, Arch's high school had a buccaneer as their mascot. How fun is that? Also, growing up, Arch had a Labrador retriever named Buck, and a franchise was born. The first Buc-ees was so successful that Arch and AG were able to expand to 27 locations throughout Texas. When asked about why he thinks Buc-ees has been so successful, Arch had this to say: "No one starts at the top. You must start at the bottom to build a great company, then a great brand." Arch believed that there was no magic secret formula to starting a business. Just the fact that the old saws of hard work, consistency, customer service, and some smart accounting skills are all it takes. Arch was determined to not only follow in his family's footsteps, but create an icon, a beacon to anyone who has ever traveled the highways of America. Arch even created 5 guiding principles in order to build his Buc-ees empire. Number 1. Develop brand recognition. Number 2. Don't focus on the size of the company. Number 3. Focus and consistency. Number 4. Exceed customers' expectations. And number 5. Take care of your goose. Arch wanted to establish trust and recognition with his customers, just as his grandparents had with the biggest little store. Buc-ee the Beaver is iconic and comforting for longtime Buc-ee's customers. Buc-ee is forever associated with Arch's dedication to his craft and his insistence upon a clean, friendly, and well-stocked store, as well as unique Buc-ee's products like beaver nuggets and camo popcorn. Both of those sound really good right now. Arch was inspired by Sam Walton's business model for Walmart. Sam also started out small. He was good at differentiating from other retailers before expanding, and that's why both Buc-ees and Walmart have remained in business for so long. Arch also expanded by taking small steps, as opposed to giant leaps, utilizing something called the flywheel effect, taken from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. Buc-ees and its success can be attributed to small, collective, strong efforts. Arch once said, "It's more fun to talk about all the possibilities of the company and go off on tangents, but I always have to go back and ask myself, does this keep my flywheel spinning?" I think it does, Arch. Arch's dominating principle is to exceed your customers' expectations. Arch's mantra is, whether you're into marketing or finance, it doesn't matter what field you go into, exceed customers' expectations. He also advises new business owners and entrepreneurs to find a reason to be mediocre and to expand their business's range of influence and demographic. So you may be wondering what Arch meant when he said, "Take care of your goose." The goose is a metaphor for a business's assets and capital. Arch advises all who are willing to listen, maintain your balance sheet so you can react when something good happens and survive when something bad happens. Pretty good advice, I would say. Arch had the name and the knowledge, and he knew that the inside of Buc-ees had to keep customers wanting to come back. Arch installed brass ceiling fans and covered the walls in rough cedar. The store was roomy and inviting at 3,000 square feet, as opposed to other similar stores, which were usually 2,400 square feet. Arch was proud, and he even told Brazosport Facts newspaper on opening day, "I think you'll see it's the nicest, prettiest store around. It's very sharp looking. I believe everyone who comes in will be in awe over the way it looks. If this one goes like we hope it will, you can never tell, we might have a chain of Buc-ees." Those would prove to be prophetic words. At the dawn of the new millennium, Buc-ees kept getting bigger and better. In 2001, Arch built and opened the first Buc-ees Travel Center in Luling, Texas. The first Buc-ees Travel Center and the others that followed featured between 80 and 120 fueling spots for gas and diesel, including ethanol-free and DEF, and an awesome selection of jerky, pastries, sandwiches, tacos, Dippin' Dots, fudge, and much more. Yum! Arch became a fixture in his own right. In an interview with Eric Benson for Texas Monthly magazine in 2019, Arch, now in his 60s, may be only 5'7", but his personality and business savvy have made him a giant in the town of Bastrop, Texas, which is home to one of the largest Buc-ees travel centers. Arch is instantly recognizable, often wearing wide-brimmed hats and blazers. He keeps his hair long and shaggy and wears jeans and cowboy boots, whose shins have been decorated with bright red and yellow Buc-ees logos featuring Buc-ee the Beaver. The largest Buc-ees is located in New Braunfels, Texas, which opened in 2012. These giant travel centers take up 56,000 square feet, and the aisles are wide enough that it's said you can drive a golf cart down them. The bathrooms at Buc-ees are, in and of themselves, something to behold. With 71 stalls, which are maintained by a special team of custodians who clean the bathroom 24 hours a day, I would go to Buc-ees just for the bathrooms. How about you guys? The Bastrop Buc-ees sells its own brand of fuel and has an amazing 655 very roomy parking spaces that are 10 feet by 20 feet, just big enough for all those Texas trucks. Arch definitely believes that everything really is bigger in Texas and told Eric Benson in the 2019 Texas Monthly article, "But I don't ever want to be over capacity. We like to make it spacious, give everybody their own space and their own shopping experience. It's one of the reasons it gets so big, because if you try to enhance the space everywhere, it just grows, and then the next thing you know." In the interview, Arch's thought ends there. But you can imagine what he was thinking. There was a time when Arch and the Applin family couldn't even begin to imagine that the biggest little store in Harrisonburg, Louisiana, would become the biggest roadside truck stop in Texas. For those of you who live in Texas, are you a Buc-ees fan? Tell your stories in the comments section after the video. Intellectual Digest loves to hear from you. The New Braunfels Buc-ees, located conveniently on Interstate 35, is even more iconic and has the distinction of being the largest convenience store in the world. The New Braunfels Buc-ees has 120 fueling stations, 1,000 parking spaces, 64 freezers of ice and frozen foods, 83 toilets, 31 cash registers, 4 icy machines, and 80 beverage dispensers. So cool! Since the world's biggest Buc-ees is situated near the Guadalupe River, Buc-ees also sells tubing and water rafting gear. To make things even better, in 2012, not long after its grand opening, the New Braunfels Buc-ees was named the 2012 Best Restroom in America by Cintas, a company that sells goods and services to businesses. Buc-ees just keeps getting better, and when you walk into the store, you're sure to be overwhelmed by all of the possibilities. Buc-ees really does have everything a traveler or truck driver could want or need. There are towering displays of gummy and sour candies, taffy, candy corn, and even cooking and barbecue gear like Buc-ees brand spatulas, Lodge cast iron skillets, and cookbooks with recipes for Texas cowboy-style open-fire campouts and offset smokers. Arch and Buc-ees also sell every kind of condiment and spice you can imagine, from hot sauce, Mayhaw jelly, and even Buc-ee's very own brand of barbecue spice rub and raw wildflower honey. Are you getting the munchies right about now? There's also a fully refrigerated deli counter, 13 varieties of beef jerky, dried sausage links, fresh, made-in-house potato chips, roasted nuts, and spicy venison sticks. For those of you who aren't aware, venison is deer meat, and it's actually pretty good. You can even order dinner at Buc-ees, thanks to a selection of prepared dishes that includes crawfish fettuccine, brisket, hamburgers, bacon-wrapped pork tenderloin, and chicken cordon bleu. Everything really is bigger and better in Texas. Did I mention that those nuts are roasted in person, right in front of you? This is actually a woman whose sole job is to roast nuts, and as if that weren't awesome enough, she's also in charge of making the fresh fudge. The Nut and Fudge lady, whose name has not been released, told Eric Benson in the 2019 article, "You sell 1,000,000 times more when you're roasting than when you're not." At the time, she made 23 pans of fudge each morning and closed her interview with a simple statement that says it all. "I love my job. I totally want to go to New Braunfels just so I can meet the Buc-ees Nut and Fudge lady. My sweet tooth is calling." Arch has successfully expanded the Buc-ees empire in the last decade. In 2016, Arch announced that he wanted to expand Buc-ees outside of Texas to a new location in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The former biggest little store was going home. Unfortunately, in 2017, the Baton Rouge project was canceled for reasons that are unknown. In April of that year, Arch came back with the news that the new Buc-ees location would be in Daytona Beach, Florida, and would be strategically placed on Daytona's LPGA Boulevard across from the Tanger Outlets Shopping Center and Stonewood Grill and Tavern. It was perfect. However, the Daytona Beach project was continually met with delays, including the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the addition of a Buc-ees location in St. Augustine, Florida. The Buc-ees in St. Augustine took precedence over the Daytona location and was opened on February 23, 2022, with the Daytona location finally opening on March 22, 2022. Folks down south just can't get enough of their beloved Buc-ees. The COVID-19 pandemic hit in March of 2020, just as Arch was planning to expand yet again into Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Missouri. Once the pandemic started to abate, the Buc-ees in Richmond, Kentucky officially opened on April 19, 2022, with stores in Smiths Grove, Kentucky, which is close to the city of Bowling Green, and Mammoth Cave National Park being planned for the future. Buc-ees keeps getting bigger and better. In 2018 and 2019, the first two Buc-ees outside of Texas opened in Alabama, in Baldwin County, and Leeds. The Georgia locations also opened that year, in Warner Robins, which has the advantages of a very fast population growth, as well as nearby Robins Air Force Base, and Calhoun, which sits about halfway between Atlanta and Chattanooga, Tennessee. Buc-ees became one of the biggest employers in the area, creating a total of 175 jobs. Things seemed to be going well for Arch Applin and the little family business that could. In the summer of 2021, Arch and Buc-ees announced that they were also planning to build Buc-ees travel centers in Florence, South Carolina, and Crossville, Tennessee, which just had their debuts in May and June of this year, respectively. Buc-ees is certainly a busy beaver these days. In January of this year, Arch announced his plans for a travel center in Springfield, Missouri, which will open sometime in 2023. New locations are also planned and in the works in the South: Athens, Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Smiths Grove, Kentucky, Harrison County, Mississippi, and a Buc-ees travel center in Sevierville, Tennessee, the home of Dolly Parton and Dollywood. Buc-ees is also coming round the mountains, over the prairie, and through the desert. In 2023 and 2024, Arch plans to bring Buc-ees travel centers to Johnston, Colorado, and there are requests for Buc-ees in New Mexico, Nebraska, Iowa, Oklahoma, and back to Louisiana. It's rumored that locations in Albuquerque and Oklahoma City are on the way, so if you live in New Mexico and Oklahoma, hold on to your hats. Of course, not everything is always so sugary sweet at Buc-ees. Like any other company, Buc-ees has certainly had their fair share of criticism. Some people say Arch Applin III is getting too big for his boots. Arch and his empire have filed multiple lawsuits against other gas station and convenience store chains, citing trademark and trade dress infringement. One of these lawsuits occurred in 2014 when Buc-ees sued the Texas-based chain Frio Beaver. Buc-ees claimed that Frio Beaver's logo, which features a beaver in a yellow circle and black outline, was illegally copying Buc-ee's Bucky the Beaver. That case was settled out of court in December of 2014, and the B&B Grocery Inc., which was affiliated with Frio Beaver, stopped using the Frio Beaver logo and mascot. There were other copyright-related lawsuits in 2013, 2016, and 2017 involving Chick's Convenience Store in Bryan, Texas, Choke Canyon Barbecue, also out of Texas, and a Nebraska-based chain that was calling itself Buc-ees with a Y. The Chick's case was settled out of court. Choke Canyon Barbecue lost their federal lawsuit and were forced to change their logo to a cowboy inside of an orange circle. As for the other Buc-ees, they agreed with Arch Applin III to remain in their original respective states and to only expand into states where the other did not have locations. Geez, who knew the convenience store business was so cutthroat? 2017 didn't go well for Buc-ees in general. That year, Arch and Buc-ees lost a Texas Employee Retention Agreement case in which a former Buc-ees employee was ordered to pay the company almost $100,000 in damages and attorney's fees for breaking a retention agreement. A Texas judge ruled that Buc-ees didn't have to take any of that money from the former employee because the contract violated Texas's doctrine of employment at will. The agreement was invalid because it didn't meet the state's requirements for what is known as a non-compete agreement. It sounds complicated, doesn't it? Did you know all of this about Buc-ees? In conclusion, the next couple of years are looking bigger and brighter for Buc-ees. The new locations are sure to be a massive success, and let's all hope that the lawsuits are simply petty and a thing of the past. On that note, that's all for today's video. Who else wants to take a road trip just so they can stop at Buc-ees?
Hail to the king, baby.
What the hell are you two doing? That's called rocking out. You wouldn't understand, Dad. You're not with it. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what's it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
And this is Dr. Gonzo for all you baby boomers. Hey, like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you right around the corner.